Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 6, 2023 Council County Board of Commissioners meeting. At this time, I recognize County Manager Brian.
Commissioners, I'd just like to bring your attention to the issues we have with the ceiling in the historic courthouse. We do have several paint chips that are coming loose. We've had one to fall over near Commissioner Jeffrey's seat. We believe it fell earlier today. We also have some issues with the plaster. We have taken the precautions of setting up another room at the Gun Memorial Public Library. If you would like to move from this location to that location, or if you would like to schedule all future meetings to that location until we have this looked at and taken care of. So it's really up to the board. If you want to move, that's fine. If you don't want to move, that's fine too. But we would recognize just a slight safety concern with falling paint chips and possible plaster.
What's the pleasure of the board? Stay here or move for tonight?
It don't matter to me.
Yes.
You want to stay here or move? Well, it doesn't matter a whole lot, because I don't want to get you in the head.
Ms. Rose? Hearing a fairly decent consensus of the board, we'll stay here for tonight's meeting.
Yes, sir.
Meetings in the future, we may have to see how it goes.
Okay.
This time, we'll have a moment of silent prayer, please. Amen. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the clerk says that we do not have any public comments. Any board recognitions? No. Mr. Bailey, Mr. Jeffries.
Well, one thing I'd like for 10 minutes to read this Democratic statement and you stop. If you do it.
Mr. Thompson, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Commissioners, we received a letter from the Castle County Democratic Party earlier today, stated 3/6/2023, Dear Castle County Board of Commissioners and related parties. The Castle County Democratic Party Executive Committee, with respect to the pending recommendation of Antonio Foster for District 4 seat vacated by the passing of Nathaniel Hall, respectfully offers the following to the Castle County Board of Commissioners for their consideration. After additional review and discussion with pertinent community members and Castle County Democratic Party Executive Board members, the board has decided to remain steadfast in our recommendation of Lieutenant Colonel retired Antonio Foster for the aforesaid seat. Reasons for this decision are as follows. Antonio Foster meets the North Carolina State statute regarding vacancies on the Board of Commissioners 153A-27. C, to be eligible for appointment to fill a vacancy, a person must be a member of the same political party as the member being replaced if that member was elected as a nominee of the political party, and two, to be a resident of the same district as the member being replaced if the county is divided into electoral districts. The Board of Commissioners or the Clerk of Superior Court, as the case may be, shall consult the County Executive Committee of the appropriate political party before filling a vacancy. The statute allows for no gray areas in interpretation and as such, Mr. Foster fulfills both requirements. He is a confirmed resident of the old district as it stands and is a registered Democrat. The fact that he has recently made amendment to his party affiliation is a matter of record, but has no bearing on his viability as our recommendation for the District 4 seat in Castle County. Mr. Foster's recommendation has been valid since it was offered 1/31/2023. With all due respect, the information presented to the Board of Commissioners by current Chair Dickerson was not based in fact when correlated with not only the North Carolina state statutes regarding this matter, but also the 2023 Democratic Plan of Organization, which reiterates the same guidelines regarding filling vacancies on the Board of Commissioners for this type of precinct district in North Carolina. Thank you again for your efforts on behalf of Castle County and for considering our recommendation of Mr. Antonio Foster, made 1/31/2023. Be advised the Castle County Democratic Party Executive Board continues to stand behind our first recommendation and is not considering a second recommendation at this time. Sincerely, Mary Susan Jesser-Poor, Chair, Sarah Broadwell, Vice Chair, Jasmine Henderson, Treasurer, and Glendora Diggs, Secretary, Paula Diggs, Appellant Chair, Castle County Democratic Party Executive Committee 2023.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next, gentlemen, we have the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to be approved?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. You have attached or been sent to you meetings from February 6th, regular meeting, February 16th, joint meeting with the town of Yancey, town of Milton, February 18th, the work session minutes, and the February the 20th regular meeting, including members of the Board of Education. I have a motion to be approved.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Discussion items from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. Ms. Shaw. Ms. Shaw.
Commissioners, tonight we have with us Jonna Sharp from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Strategic Member Services Division. Ms. Sharp is a NCACC County Operations Consultant. Her business focuses on working collaboratively with counties to pinpoint solutions for physical and operational challenges. She spent 3 decades in local government leadership roles in Virginia and Lake County, where her roles included Budget Director, Chief Financial Officer, and Chief Operating Officer. She is partnering with the NCACC to bring her passion for public service and breadth of expertise to support all of North Carolina's counties. Ms. Sharp.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm just here to introduce myself to you, as I hopefully will be working with your team over the next several months to assist them in pretty much whatever capacity I can. My role with the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners is specifically right now working with those counties that find themselves on the unit assistance list of the Treasurer's Office. I want to come alongside your staff. I'm basically trying to do on-the-job training in areas where I can help improve efficiency and effectiveness. Working today, I've been working on everything from sales tax distribution to ARPA reconciliations. I'm working also and assisting with the audit in whatever way I can. I'm kind of working I serve a different role from the Isley Group, who you'll hear from in a moment. And they're really the hands-on in the numbers, getting the records caught up. And I want to help kind of build capacity in your staff moving forward to position you to complete your audits on time in the future. I've been very impressed and with the willingness of the staff to want to learn things and do things the right way. They've given me a very welcome reception, which makes it very easy to want to come in and assist and help. The association is committed, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners is committed to helping counties, and we've targeted those on that that are late in their audits right now as our top priority, so we can help move those things along. I believe you met two of my colleagues at your retreat, so we're your team who's helping you in whatever way we can to shore up the financial operations for the county.
Any questions from Ms. Sharp, gentlemen? So you will be working alongside the finance office and the Eisner group, am I correct?
I'll be working more so with the finance office and supporting the Isley group to the extent that I can assist in helping get some of the audit work complete.
Now, have you started here in council yet?
Yes, sir. I've been on site a few times. I've been here all day today. I'm working on site as well as off site. I fortunately have access to your system, so there's much that I can do remotely, and I'm in constant communication with the finance team and the county manager. With
What little you've seen so far, and I've been here for just a few days. What are your thoughts on what you said? And where we're headed? I know we're headed to a good place, and it's not.
What I've seen so far, and what I frankly will share that I've seen in a lot of counties where there has been staff turnover, is people don't know what they don't know. And that's why in my 30 years of local government, I've pretty much seen and done it all, especially from a finance operating standpoint. So I'm able to get in and pretty quickly see how we can make improvements and how changes can be made with a goal of making things easier. I often find that people do things the hard way because they don't know there's an easy way. And my understanding is that the fiscal year 22 books are in much better shape. So hopefully once the 21 audit is completed, we can move through and getting some of the other things caught up. That's actually my interest in working with the team right now, is also looking at where FY23 audit is, or where the books are, because that's important to have a handle on those as we move into working on your fiscal year 24 budget, which part of my work will be assisting the team on the 24 budget. I often proclaim I'm a self-proclaimed budget geek. I love budgets, probably one of the favorite things I do. And so really kind of seeing how getting that budget straight can help make things even simpler as they go throughout the year and doing the accounting. So I think you had several unfortunate circumstances, a system conversion, which is always a challenge, staff turnover, but I don't see anything from my standpoint that isn't fixable. And with the right attitude and the willingness to learn, which is exactly what I've seen so far, I think you're poised to move in a very good direction. It's just getting the backlog caught up is the challenge.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
I believe next we have Mr. Greg Isley from Isley and Associates.
Commissioners, tonight we have with us the principal of Isley and Associates, Greg Isley. Mr. Isley is here to provide an overview and an update on processes used to correct FY 2020-2021 accounting system. So at this time, I'll ask Mr. Isley to come and speak. We also have Beverly Stroud, who is associated with Isley's.
Good evening, thank you. The question is, when is the audit going to be done? I do not know that answer, so let me just put that right up front. I am not your auditor. What we're here to do is to get your books and records into an auditable condition so the audit team from the firm can come in and do that work. So our function is to get the accounting record straight. Then we will write the financial statements with the footnotes to provide to the auditor in order for them to do that audit. This has been a challenge, not to make you feel any better for this taking so long, but you're not in a unique position across the state. I think there are 21 other counties that do not have their audits done. There are 130 municipalities that do not have their audits done across the state right now. There is a lack of talent across the state. When I say talent, people with experience to be in key positions in finance positions. And that's causing a strain across the whole state. It's really a crisis situation right now. Am I too loud? Okay. We just had the Government Finance Officers Association meeting last week in Raleigh for a couple of days of continuing education. And the situation right now is, I think we're in 25 towns and counties right now doing something very similar to what we're assisting you with at this point in time. And to find people to step into those finance officers role with experience is tough. They're retiring. And from what the economists indicated from Wells Fargo, it's not just in the accounting area, it's everywhere. They showed a graph where basically when COVID hit, 55 and over left their positions. And it was a huge drop in the graph, and they're not coming back. And so that's really left a void in key financial positions, as well as other areas also to fill that void. So what we're looking to do is to get your accounting records and transactions reported so the auditor can come in and do that audit. I'm not sure if you understand exactly what we're facing as far as findings, so I've asked Beverly to kind of, with your permission, show you the issues that we're going through and trying to address. It's not something that you snap your finger and it's done overnight. And as far as the difficulty of finding people, just before I walked into this meeting, I got a notice from our staff from another town in the western part of the state, the finance officer resigned. And so, now we've got to step into a greater role as far as helping them. I've probably got 25 or 30 people across the state working on issues just like this right now. And we do have a good team focused and devoting a lot of time, and Beverly will go over who those are to help you get in that position. Once it's called up, I think you'll be on a more regular cycle, and we can make predictions about when books and records will be done and ready to audit. But at this point in time, I can't tell you exactly when this year will be done so we can get caught up. I will agree with what you said, that things are better than what they were back in the 2021 year, but we've got to get through some more issues there to get it caught up. So Beverly, if you'll kind of walk us through.
Great day, my name is Beverly Stroud, I'm a CPA. I manage his government division. I originally was not on this project, but a couple months ago I was brought in to kind of help assist and help move the project farther along and faster, hopefully. So I want to share my screen. I have a short PowerPoint, and I just want to show you some examples. I'm not going to try to get too far in the weeds, but I do want to show you some of the things we're dealing with and why it's taking so long. Just share my screen here. Okay. So we're working on currently the FY20 year, and that's the year, as you know, that you went to Venus mid-October, November timeframe, so there were 3 months in the old system, and the rest of the year was carried out in the new system. And then we're also working on the May reconciliations for FY21 for the current year. So we have put several people on the team to try to help move this along. Many of you probably seen Deborah Mack, I think she might have been the meeting before, but she was, overseeing the project, she worked on some budget issues. My role was mainly working on cash transactions and working with Melissa Miller, mainly trying to, record cash transactions that were missed. And then Melissa Bishop, she's working here on site now, several days a week, to try to help the staff from before Johnny came, and also working on some payroll recordings that we need. We have Linda Pennell, she's worked on your trust account, sales tax, we've got, AR issues that we've got to get reconciled, and I'll go through some of these later. Greg has staff in the office, Paige Rogers, Colleen, they have worked on bank reconciliations and helping us figure out which transactions we need to research. Jennifer Barnett helps with FY 23 budget. Our team has bi-weekly update calls on Tuesday. We all get together, our team, staff here from Casman, and now we've added John to those calls to try to help us keep moving and to see where everybody's at and mark things off the list as we go along. And if anybody's found anything new that's popped up, we work on those items too. So far, just me and Linda, we're mainly working on cash. We've recorded 178 journal entries just to cash, try to correct some of the things that went wrong in the conversion. And I know that, this started going sideways, I think, in your effort to be converted from ACS to Venus. And I don't think I need to belabor that point. I think everybody knows that's when all this happened. The staffing changes along with that conversion is out of track. So I won't go through all of this, but there's several issues that we ran into at first that slowed it down, getting going. And it was the balances that were brought over were incorrect. I think it had to be reversed out, put back in, correct amount. There were AP invoices for 21 that got entered in 22, 217 of them had to be reversed back out, put back in the right year. And all those things take time because, as accountants, we have to make good tracks for the auditor and be able to justify what we're doing. So we had to make sure that we were doing it in a manner that could be tracked and easily identified by the auditor. And then after June 30, 2020, there were no bank reconciliations done. So we had to have our staff in the office come in first and go through and try to prepare the bank reconciliation so that we knew as accountants what we had to work on and the transactions we had to find. So the main thing I will focus on is bank reconciliation because, in local government and most businesses, everything that goes in and out of the bank has to be recorded, and that's where the main entries in your books come from. It's off the bank statement. When you converted from ACS to Munis, they did a lump sum journal entry and brought things for July over in a big entry, one big entry. August came over in a big entry, September, and like half of October. So it's kind of hard to trace that back to the bank statement. What they did was took all your revenue that came in and put a plus to cash, and then put every revenue that came in. Well, that's hard to trace back to the bank statement when you make one lump sum entry in cash. So our staff has taken a lot of time to try to break that down and identify whether it actually did hit the bank in that month or in another month. What they found in the main checking account was a lot of transactions were entered in the wrong month. For example, I had a deposit I was working before I came here, had 4 items on that deposit, I believe in November. 2 of them were entered in March, 1 of them was entered in June, and 1 was never entered on the same deposit ticket. So it made it hard for us to trace your bank transactions when some of it did get recorded and then it got recorded piecemeal. So we've had, and I'll show you some examples of that really quickly. I had drawdowns from the trust when you were building a school. You would draw down money from a construction loan and those didn't get recorded. So we had like $1 to $2 million deposits that didn't get recorded on the books. You got the money, you paid the vendors, but it just didn't get recorded. So we had to, Jennifer had to go back to Truist and get copies of the drawdowns so we could trace those back. Same thing with NCCMT, the trust account, money's transferred back and forth, sometimes you do that to earn better interest, but the transactions were not recorded. So we trace those to the other account and then had to make interest to both to be able to get into the balance. And then, as I said, some were entered on various days and months on the same deposit ticket. And the payroll liabilities, you paid the payroll taxes and things, but then they were entered into the wrong account. So you might have paid federal income taxes, but it was entered in the federal Social Security account. So they were all out of whack. We traced a lot of that down, being able to make the correct entries to those. but it takes a lot of time, because you're talking about 12 months, because it was happening even after the unit's conversion. Here's just an example I can show you of the entry they made for July. They brought over the transaction for the ACS. It's a 21-page journal entry. And all these credited to debited to expenses, and then they did one huge entry to cash to take it out of your bank account. Well, you know, if you look at bank statements, that's not the way that it came out. It came out as checks or drafts. And so for us to try to break that number down and make sure everything drafted or checks cashed has taken a lot of time for each month that we've had to look at. When our team looked at this, they broke the bank transactions down into 4 categories. We had deposits that went in the bank, like you physically took a deposit to the bank, but did not record it in the system. You also had wire transfers coming into your bank account, like sales tax, but they were not recorded. So that was a separate bucket they put it in. Then you had drafts out of your account, you know, when you pay bills, but those were not recorded. So we have to look those up. And then fourthly, there are items in Munis when we look in your cash account that don't show up on bank statement. So we have to take these 4 buckets of things that our staff put your transactions into, and we have to then, as accountants, research each one that didn't match up. For example, here's an example of October, November 2020 transactions. And I know you can't read this, it's not important to read the numbers, it's just, you see what's in orange? These are October deposits on the left. And they were deposited in your bank account in October, because, you know, you have to deposit daily according to statute. And you did deposit the money. But a lot of these are deposited in October in the bank, but not recorded until November or December. And they're actually recorded within the November and December date. So when we're reconciling the October checkbook, they're not dated. They're in another month. So we had to, you know, we can't just do 1 month to finish it, because it may be in another month that we've got to look at. So the staff went through and identified these transactions. And in orange, they're okay, they're just in the wrong month. And then the yellow ones, I send those to the staff, and I'll show you that. And then I send that to the staff here, and then they research it for us and send them back. And then we have to look at them and see, were they recorded just in another place, or they got divided out and recorded separately, or do they now need to be recorded? And if so, we have to get code to, you know, to enter on the staff. And these ones on the right in yellow are ones that were never recorded, and we have now recorded them, or we went back to bank. So, you know, the ones that are highlighted are good, but, you know, we've had to go through these, and it's one deposit at a time. And whether it's a $500 deposit or $500,000 deposit, we still have to take as much time to look it up, make sure everything got recorded. These are drafts or checks. If you see on the right, this is a whole line of checks that were written out of Munis, or written out of ACS, the old system, but never got recorded in Munis, but they went to the bank. So when we were recording the bank transactions, we found all these checks that were not recorded in Munis. So you can read it, but on the right it says entered 12323, and it has my initials. So I entered all these checks in Munis and updated them in January this year. And these on the left are transactions that were drafted out of your account, but never got recorded. So we have to come back to the staff here and ask them, what are these and where do we need to record them at? These are EFT or wire transfers into your account that didn't get recorded. This is just an example from October, November. If you can read the numbers at the bottom, like 11/12, there was a wire transfer into your account for $3 million didn't get recorded. And if you can read that, it says Fidelity Bank Wire, and it has a number. It doesn't tell you what it was for. And we traced a lot of these back to being Truist construction loan, but it doesn't say Truist. You would think if it's coming from a drawdown from Truist, it would say Truist, but it just says Fidelity Bank Wire. So Jennifer has to go back to the bank and get them to drill down into that and find out exactly what it is, so we can record these large transactions. And then lastly, transactions. This is a list of transactions that are on your general ledger, on your books, that we couldn't find on the bank statement. Sometimes we're able to match these up, that they're a combination of things. Like if you can read it, it says on 1026, there are all these cash receipts entered, but they put in like the minimum field, these are for 10-1. But then we have to go back to 10-1 and say, is there something we didn't find in 10-1 because they were entered on the 26th, so they were actually for the first. So it's just a puzzle that we're having to put together, but we have to make good tracks. And I know the burning question is what's taking so long, but this is what's taking so long. Staff have been great at pulling stuff, and they're having to go back and figure out what someone else was thinking or doing at the time. And so it's taking them some time to find it, and then it takes us time to unravel it once we get it. This is an example. When I send a list to Melissa, I send her these deposits that I can't find on the general ledger. She actually goes to boxes, I understand are here, and pulls the paper deposit and scans it to me so that I can see it. And then once I get it, as you can see here, this one on the left, there's $160,000 for $160,001 deposit. $1 was recorded. It was deposited November 19th, 2020. $1 was recorded in March. $160,000 was recorded June 30th, 2020. But it was deposited on November the 19th. So when we're reconciling November, we didn't see any of it. But that's because $1 was in March and 160 was in June. So we have to work all the months at once because of these things being off kilter in your system. We've even found checks written like in the spring that were recorded in the following fiscal year. And we have to go into that fiscal year and reverse them back out and put them back into the right year so that the books will be correct and match to the bank statement. This deposit on the right, it had a sticky note stuck to it. Deposited 11/10 of 2020, and they recorded it in your system a month prior. So again, sometimes they go backwards and sometimes they go forward. So it's just been a long process of matching these things up. And see that deposit on $599, but we had to take the same amount of time to look up $160,000 and do $599. And so, and I want to give you a current update on the bank reconciliations. And when I say bank reconciliation, I'm not saying the bank was reconciled. I don't want to mislead anybody. I just want to make that note. Our staff has been through your bank statements through January this year, and they've identified all the items that we need to look up on the accounting side and figure out with the staff how to enter those. So we've gone through January 23, which are NCC&T, and your small accounts. You have multiple bank accounts. You have one for DSS clients, you have one for the inmates, you have one for your sheriff drug fund. We're having to go through all those accounts, and no transactions have been recorded for those accounts. So we're having to record every transaction that went through those accounts. And then the main checking she's done at the end of last year, identifying items that we need to look at. She's got the ones that she's done for FY23, we sent to Jonna and the staff. Because I know your budgets, you're working on your budget and you need to know where FY23 stands to be able to plan next year. So we went ahead and sent them the current stuff so they could work on that and you could move along with getting those updated first. Because they sent us most of FY21, we're still just going through it. And then, like I say, most of FY21, I have a lot of it and I'm still going through finalizing what we still might need. Because some of it they've not been able to find. So I've got to come to final list. If in the end we don't find it all, we'll have to come up with some suggestion depending on the amount of what we need to do, depending on how much it is. Besides bank reconciliation, there are other items that we've had to work on. When you went to Munis, your fixed assets weren't entered into the system, and you know you have a lot of assets, vehicles, buildings, land that had to be entered. So we got the schedule from the previous auditor. We had to make sure that his list matched to the audit by fund and by vehicles versus buildings and land. We got all that tied out, and we made import files and imported those assets into your system. The assets are in there now. But then we had to go through the new year, FY21, and find anything that you purchased that year. So we had to look at every transaction that was $5,000 or greater, and then add those assets if they were qualified as a fixed asset. In many cases, there were no invoices to support some of it, so we had to call vendors and get copies of invoices so that we could research whether it is a fixed asset or not. And I've been through those, and I've got a list, I've got to get it ready to import, with the only exception of the new school. There was a big project that's going on with, and there's chairs and tables and furniture in that. We have to dissect that and break it down to just what is the building to be capitalized. So we've got to finish the FY 21 fixed assets, but we have come a long ways and are almost ready to import those. And then there's some other items we went over with John and Brian last week at ACC meeting. We have to do things like the vacation accrual. These are outside of bank entries. Vacation accruals, we will finish the bank reconnaissance. You have a landfill. There's always entries that have to be done to the landfill to record what it's going to cost to close, if you were to close the landfill based on the capacity of the landfill. There's pension entries, post-employment benefits, you have the retirement plans, and you have to record entries to those. We were going to record your EMS, accounts receivable was due from your patients, and we requested a report. And the report shows you have $451,000 due from patients, but your books say you have a $1.3 million due from patients. So we're not sure why that $900,000 variance is there. So we've got to, dig into that, because maybe you had a prior billing company that's holding some of those things. And then we're doing the regular, normal year-end entries for sales tax, your accounts receivable at landfill, property taxes. And then Jonna, of course, is working with us as a prior auditor. I guess she's still auditor Thompson Price, but she's getting some work papers from us. She has a relationship with them as well, and she's working on some work papers from Thompson Price so that we can move some of these entries along to get ready for them to come in. Are there any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Evidently, this thing has been going on for a long period of time.
Yes, sir.
So why would the auditors not catch a lot of this that you're catching in fact? We never had many findings on any audit reports that we got previously. And I would think that if the auditors were doing their job, they would have been picking some of this stuff up.
The last audit report we had is June 30, 2020.
Right.
What we're working on is from July 2020.
I understand that, but my point being, why did the auditors not pick up on some of this stuff that's going wrong?
They have audits that they do.
They haven't audited the year that we're working.
Well, they just didn't start overnight. Evidently, this thing's been backing up for quite some time. So I'm saying, why did the auditors not find it several years ago?
I think most of it happened when we converted the units. Because we have access to ACS, your old system, and we see all your transactions there. Matter of fact, we've had the records back to get many times to figure out where to record them. I think, when you went, that conversion did not go as it should have. And I don't know the staff, I'm not familiar with staff, so I'm not blaming on past staff, but, I think it was overwhelming. It just never got caught up.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Question?
The only thing I got is that some of this that we had that the dude was talking about, they had these checks money over and don't turn it in 2-3 months later before they turn it in.
Well, they actually deposited it, but then it didn't get
I mean,
recorded.
they didn't record.
Right, and I'm not sure as to why. I think a lot of the papers I get will say, need a code, or, so they would record the things that they knew were going to be. But anything else they held out to get somebody's advice on how to code it. And sometimes it got recorded later, and when they did, they recorded it then, which was 3 months later. And some of it just never got recorded at all, so they never got coded.
I know she said about March that they spent $1 and had $160,000 turned in June. Why?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they put it in the bank, but then they just didn't record it until the end of the year, and I'm not sure why. But that's why we're having to do all 12 months at once instead of, like normally you reconcile your checkbooks 1 month at a time, but it's not that.
And she was just looking at 1 month, but there are hundreds of these transactions each month, times 12 months, for 20, 21, and 22. Now, it's not as much in the 22 year, it happened to be around.
So you're not going back to 2021?
We started in July 2020, and we've gone through, the first thing that we had to do was identify all these transactions that weren't reported. Then we had to find out what are these. And they've been digging back through the archives and, trying to find backup for it. And it's been difficult sometimes because sometimes there's a journal entry that we go back to. So we have to figure out what that is.
This is the file that we are working from on Greg's team. And it had, if you can see the tabs at the bottom, there's like 4 tabs for each month. And we, as we mark things off, we're checking them off. But you can see the volume of items that we're filling for each month. There's just so much. And each one of these numbers here, the 237,000, for example, represents a whole spreadsheet of numbers that we're having to look up one at a time. And the amounts are too material for us to just say, just start from scratch. It's just too much. And like I said, we have to write the journal entries and put the papers with it and scan it in so that we'll be ready for your auditors.
So if they pull something, they question it, you've got sufficient backup to say what it is, so it gives them the ability to express an opinion. I do want to point out one thing about auditors too, that I didn't mention last week. I knew this had occurred, I didn't know the extent of it, but there were 9 firms last year in North Carolina that elected not to do government auditing. It affected, I think, 75 or 76 entities, towns or counties. There are a lot of firms just pulling out doing the audit work. When they had in the News Observer that I think Apple was opening an office in this part of the state and Google was opening an office, a lot of people were saying, get ready. I thought, oh, no, because what they're doing is they're drawing people away from the finance officer position. They're hiring away, which makes it more difficult for the rural counties in particular. The other thing that it's doing is making it more expensive as far as getting audits done, because these CPA firms can go work on these other companies and get a higher rate of return than they can on doing the government audits. And that's why you see them withdraw. So I know the treasurer is aware of it, the LGC is aware of it. They're having discussions about what you do. But the scope we worked at this past year, we've seen the audit costs going up 15 to 40%. Okay, because, and then there are some towns out there, they can't find people to do the audit because there isn't enough auditors out there to do that work. But if you are alerting to, you want to make sure you do have a good audit so it makes the board aware of what issues are out there and you can react to it and go forward. But it is a crisis mode right now within this state. One, finding the experienced talent to fill in the finance officer role. And 2, to getting good qualified auditors doing the audit.
A couple of questions I have. One, I saw one slide on there, I think it was the FY 21. You had on there that there were no interest made on DSS, client fund, sheriff's department, drug fund, and inmate custodial fund. There was no interest made, but you're saying the deposits were put in.
Yes, sir.
How do y'all determine if the amount that was deposited was what was actually received?
We have copies of your bank statement. And so what we do is we enter, for like DSS and the jail, you're just custodian of those funds for the inmates or the DSS clients. There's really only one line item it goes to. So we report every deposit to that line and then any transaction out to the same line.
How do you know that that's what was actually received? I understand what was taken to the bank, no problem with that, but how do you know that that was actually received?
We're not verifying those, no.
Second question, one slide on the EMS, 451,000, showing that we did have. That's a big number.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I was finance officer for Greene County for a while before I came to Greg, but we also used Colleton, which I think is your, use Colleton billing. we converted a couple of times different third-party billing companies. And so we let the prior company carry our old accounts receivable, when they worked that, did that set off and, collection agency type stuff for that. And there may be a situation where we're with now, there's another company prior to them that we don't know about yet that's carrying that, but I'm not sure.
And I'm not trying to work with it, but I guess my question is just say like the detention, inmate control custody fund. Would you have to contact, whether it be the federal government, because you know the feds pay for housing on federal inmates and then they just get the confinement program. Do you have to contact like the state or the feds to say how much did you send us?
We probably would have to do that with sheriff, we will verify sheriff's funds. The inmate, I believe, you have a county jail, right? So the inmate funds is actually the inmates you took in, their money. And they maintain, you know, their commissary money, things like that.
Right, okay.
Deposits in and out. And you probably have software, I'm used to somebody using Keith software that keeps up the inmates' money in and out. But we don't have access to that, so all we know is what's on the bank statement, came in and came out.
So you don't know if that's what actually came from the sheriff's office to.
Exactly. That'll be on the auditor to sample it when he's doing the audit. And then for whoever is in charge of that money at the sheriff's office to verify the funds that they removed from the inmate and gave back to them.
And it'd be the same thing, I guess, with DSS and.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate all the work you're doing. You're the first person that's come in here and gave us some numbers. That's why we're all probably asking questions. Everything else is soon to be just glassing it over. It's quite embarrassing that we've got ourselves in this shape that no one was watching us. I know it's not you to start pointing out who that is. You should take responsibility for that. But I saw a lot of big numbers like Frank or Mr. Rose said. Is it trending one way or the other that we're going in negative or positive? Or can you tell at this point?
I can't tell at this point. It's too many transactions still out there to be reported. I am working, I'm going about a month, working up through the numbers that our office did, and I'm in the spring of 2021. So I mean, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think we'll have them all recorded here shortly. But, you know, when we started, your bank balance was way in negative. I mean, on your books, not at the bank. So as we're entering, we're coming up to a positive situation. So I think, you know, your books, your bank balance, I think will be okay. It's just on your books, we got to get them in sync to where we can verify that it's correct.
2 or 3 questions.
Yes, sir.
I believe you showed one on the slide where transactions that were in the book, but not in the bank. Is that correct?
That's the appearance, but as we're working through them, they may show up in another month. Or some have been double recorded. We found some 4 times recorded, reversed out twice, so we had to reverse it a 3rd time to get it, 1 time. So it's just different.
But what that shows before you dig into it is that some numbers were entered for something. But that money was never put in the bank, or was never taken out of the bank, either or.
We just don't know where it's at. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't know where the money's at, I'm just saying there's batches of tax that they're recorded and deposited, we just can't match it up to the bank statement.
Will you be able to?
Some of them I've not been able to. But what I'm trying to do is hold out to the end, and I'm actually keeping a spreadsheet in one large spreadsheet. The months, and sometimes I match up something up here to something down here, and I'm able to cross it off. But what I want to do is get to the final amount and see where we're at then. Because I'm going to give them a final list to look up some things they haven't been able to give me yet, just because they weren't able to locate it or it's from another department. But we're going to try our best to locate, especially anything large.
Have you seen anything that would indicate any type of wrongdoing by any individual?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay, good. Have all the vendors been paid that you can tell transactions? Everybody's been paid?
Yes, sir. I mean, it just looks like a bookkeeping issue, from what I've seen. I don't, we don't verify. The fraud hasn't happened, but you know, it just looks like the munis conversion went wrong. And, you know, it's taken almost what, a year to clean up a year's worth of stuff.
What month was it in fiscal year?
October 2020.
So it was in part of the way through the fiscal year.
Yes, sir, and that may be, even in a good conversion, that's tough to do it mid-year, but when it goes off track, then you have staff that leave, and you gotta have other people get trained, and it's just a perfect storm.
And I know that you don't know when you're gonna be finished. I heard that all the time. You've got to have a ballpark out there. You've got to. 6 months, year, 3 weeks, something.
As soon as we put a time out there, you're gonna hold us accountable. You're right. And this is like a treasure hunt. You know, you've got to find where these transactions are to get them recorded correctly. What I will tell you is, we've got a dedicated team working on this on a daily basis to push this through so that the financial statements can be written and the auditor can begin the audit process, and you can also work on your budget. And I understand the importance of it, and we're going to push as hard as we can to get this done as soon as we can. And then provide the schedules that the auditors need to be able to do the audit work. I do want to point out something. A bank reconciliation is a key internal control procedure, because you need to match up what your ledger says to what's actually going through the bank. Now, what it doesn't address, which you brought up a good point, was everything deposited that should have been deposited. Well, those are other controls that should be in place. But I will tell you that we're seeing, because of turnover in the finance area, lack of bank reconciliations being done on a timely basis. And when you don't do that, it is conducive for fraud to occur, because you don't have the checks and balances in place and the oversight in place to see if something's done. We've not run across that, okay? But a lot of times, it's what you don't see that didn't hit the bank is where the fraud is occurring, and you've got to address other controls associated with that. And, you know, when your auditor comes in, they're supposed to address that particular item. I will tell you, you don't have the record for the most consecutive months of bank reconciliations not being done. We went to a county a couple of years ago, they had done a bank reconciliation in 25 years, and they had clean audits. Okay, fortunately, we nailed it down. We can narrow it down to about $300,000 difference. If we went to the LGC and said, we could spend $500,000 looking for $300,000. Would you like for us to adjust it, mark it clean, and move forward? They said, yeah. But when this gets up to date, the bank reconciliations need to be done on a timely basis and on a monthly basis.
And I realize that having John from NCACC is going to help you tremendously too, because we have someone here on site that's working on our team with us on this. But, you know, Jennifer's trying to learn as well and keep training in her new role. And I think John will help with that, and us being on site, that person can help us on this project, help pull things. So it gives us an extra person with expertise and connections, get some of these items that we need.
One other side project we've been working on is, and I think we're coming to a favorable resolution with this. I haven't heard back from the IRS agent, but 2018, you know, you're required to issue 1099s to your vendors. In some manner, the IRS did not receive those 1099s in 2018. They were never filed. So the IRS came back and was going to assess in excess of $500,000 of backup withholding. I think we've worked that down to a much lower number now, working with the agent. But the other part of critical accounting routines is when you get to the end of the year, you've got your W-2s and 1099s issued. They are very aware the team is of those issues right now. And I feel good about going forward. That will not be missed. It was a very unusual situation because the county actually had documentation that the file was 1099s, okay? But the IRS never received it, and they didn't bother to contact until 4 or 5 months ago, Brian, to say, we didn't receive your 1099s, we're gonna assess you this amount of money. But working with, I've got a IRS retired agent on the staff that headed the Southeast, and he knew who to call and where to get to, and I think we're working that down to a much lower number. So that's kind of a side project from what we're doing with the bookkeeping items also.
When you brought up something a little interesting that I wasn't aware of, so we're going to be assessed a penalty by the IRS because.
You were.
But you said you brought it down to a lower
We're
number.
working that down. I haven't heard back to her. In fact, whatever they assess, we're gonna go to the appeals court and see if we can get that removed, and I think we've got a pretty good shot.
Because if the county has the documentation to prove that the file was sent.
They had the email that it was sent. And actually, some of the vendors have actually sent copies of those 1099s back where they were filed. But in the IRS eyes, it was never sent. So a lot of that documentation which you supplied and got, if they do come back to the assessment, we will appeal that, and the agent on my staff feels like they had a really good shot at it.
And
Feels like they had a good shot.
this is from what year?
2018.
Okay. Any other questions, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Well, thank you. Mr. Powell, appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda, Common Industrial Park Office, Miller.
Commissioners, after our last meeting, I had a follow-up discussion with entity. I had a follow-up discussion with the entity that had made an informal offer to purchase land at the Pelham Industrial Park. They now indicate they would probably be willing to pay $8,000 an acre. Deputy County Manager is passing out a map of the Pelham Industrial Park. But I believe the larger question is, do you want to proceed with this property as it was originally intended, an industrial property, or in light of the casino development, would you like to explore other options for the parcel of land?
I'd like to do the second. We've had a discussion, because I really see restaurants, motels that, of course, it's my opinion. And I'd like for us to at least have a discussion on that. I know we've kind of tossed it around already.
Mr. Miller, this map that we have in front of us, is this what remains that the county owns at the Pelham Industrial Site?
That's correct. The outline, dotted line map.
And what is it that the business is offering at $8,000? How much are they? Yeah, how much?
5 to 10
Where at?
That's not been stipulated yet.
And how much is left?
About 65 acres.
Then there's no road frontage. As you know, he's going to have to take that.
The last land that was sold there, county received what for? How much?
$8,000.
Okay. And how long ago was that?
Year and a half, 2 years.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion, we not accept.
I have a motion that the offers be turned down. Have a second? Second. Motion made and second. Any more discussion?
I'm kind of, excuse me, I'm kind of in agreement with Commissioner Fences. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen away on that north side of the casino. There's a chance that there's a chance we get restaurants and stuff away. We don't know yet. But if you get rid of all of it, or you don't have it.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. Roll call voting. Mr. Holt?
No.
You're in favor of your motion, but aye, correct? Okay. Mr. Rose? Aye. Mr. McVeigh?
In favor.
Aye, in favor. Mr. Jeffries? Your votes aye, the motion carries. We will not be parting with that part. Now, back to your original statement, Mr. Miller. Does the board want to have a discussion on changing the designation of this site from industrial to what would we call it, recreational?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to bring you back, some information that you're on the restrictions that are, attached to the Pella Industrial Park and let you see what those mean.
All right, sounds good.
I think we should investigate and see what our options are. And I'm, as far as with y'all, I'm really, road frontage is everything. We sell them all that road frontage and the rest of it's just usual.
All right, Mr. Miller, opioid settlements.
Commissioners, this supplement to the MOA is called a Supplemental Agreement for Additional Funds from Additional Settlements of Opioid Litigation, or SAAF for short. It provides that the bulk of North Carolina's money from the Wave 2 settlements will go to counties and municipalities to address the opioid crisis. The SAAF extends the basic terms of the MOA governing the Wave 1 settlements to the Wave 2 settlements. The distribution formula and spending restrictions will mirror the original MOA allocation model outlined in the first settlement agreement, which we signed in 2021. This is good news for Caswell County, and we look forward to the discussion, and we look forward to the potential authorization for us to move forward with the opioid settlement resolution under the action items. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We have our county attorney with us tonight. He can also jump in and answer any questions you may have.
Questions, gentlemen? Hearing none, we'll move on down to action items, the PTRC Housing Consortium.
Commissioners, we have with us tonight Matthew Doles, Executive Director of the Piedmont Triad Regional Council. He is joining us tonight to explain the housing consortium. We are being invited to join. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Dole to speak with us about the housing consortium and the resolution attached with it.
Chair, board members, it's a pleasure to be before you today. I'm Matthew Doles, I'm the Executive Director of PTRC. I won't value your time, but just briefly, this is the first time I've had a chance to speak to you since Nate Hall passed. He was on our board, and I got to know Nate 12 years ago through the merger process in our region. He was a trusted voice and a consensus builder for our board, and his loss was taken very deeply by a lot of our board members. Just wanted to make sure that you knew that we appreciated you lending Nate to us for all the years you let him come down and serve our board. And that he loved where he was from and was a huge proponent of everything in Caswell County, and so he represents the folks. So thank you for that. I am here to talk to you today about an opportunity to take part in a home consortium. First, I'll tell you a little bit about what a home consortium is and what that does. The home program is under HUD at the federal level. It was started, the home consortium program was started way back in the Reagan administration when they felt like rural areas and small towns and counties were not able to access housing funds like the big cities were able to. And so what they did is they put together a program where smaller areas could basically form a consortium and come together for mass and then receive direct funding from HUD. We've had one of those in our region. When we were in Northwest Piedmont, we had one in our rural Northwest counties, which are Yadkin, Stokes, State, and Surrey. Surrey County is the lead in that. We've had that for about 28 years.
They get about $600,000 a year, and that's flexible money to use toward whatever housing needs the members of the consortium feel like they'd like to address. They've developed about 800 housing units over the time that they've had those funds in those 4 rural counties. The types of projects that they do is usually one of the questions I get, and it is pretty flexible money, and it's generally used with projects to leverage private investment or work with nonprofits to meet whatever housing needs you might have. A lot of the work in those 4 counties that we have in our region that have a consortium have been building elderly housing, and those are like in duplexes or apartment complexes in a lot of our smaller communities that needed that. We've worked with a lot of nonprofits, church-based nonprofits to redevelop, quite frankly, problem apartment complexes and things that communities want to take care of that we could make deals to buy and have a nonprofit that would then redevelop those and make them a more positive impact on the communities. Habitat for Humanity is a great partner for us in those counties. So we would, for example, buy materials and then they're using volunteer labor to build houses for folks. So there are a lot of different things you can do with it. Right now, Mount Airy is working with us and they asked for funding for a 20-bed transitional facility for folks who are dealing with substance abuse issues, which is a huge issue in Surrey County. And so they asked for some funding for that. The consortium we're talking about here, really, we're talking about it now because Greensboro used to have a consortium that they included Burlington and Alamance County in. They changed their governance rules, and Burlington and Alamance decided they didn't want to participate in that consortium any longer. So we saw an opportunity to develop a new one. The members have to be contiguous, and so we're talking to Rockingham, you folks, Alamance and Burlington, Randolph and Davidson County. All the other members at this point have said that they would like to be considered and take part in negotiations over how a consortium might look so that they could be included in the consortium moving forward. It looks like, based on current funding, this consortium would generate about maybe just over $2 million a year that could go toward projects within the members. How we work our current consortium is every member appoints 2 folks to sit on the board. We bring projects forward and administrate it at PTRC, but we don't make any of the decisions on where the funds go. That's all those decisions are made by the membership, which are usually county managers and an elected official or a private section from each of the counties as they appoint them. What we need from you at this point would just be an expression of interest. And we would get that to Burlington. Burlington would be the lead because they already work with HUD, and there has to be one entity within the group that receives funds and then disperses that to projects and is responsible for those. They're already engaged with HUD, and so they have access to the financial systems. It makes sense to use them as the kind of lead entity within this. If you would like to take part in that, then what we'll do over the next couple months is get the folks together who are interested, build the documents for a consortium. Then you would have another opportunity at that point to look at the agreement between all those members, how it would be governed, and formally approve that, which would need to be done by June 3rd. I know that's a lot. More than happy to answer any questions that you might have around this. I will tell you again, I've been to Rocky was in Alamance County this morning, and they unanimously decided to move forward with this. Burlington, all the other members, Rockingham, Randolph, and Davidson. So we are interested in having you take part. But again, that's in your hands, and we're more than happy to move forward if you'd like.
Any questions?
Is it mostly, I couldn't hear and understand everything you're saying, but is it mostly renovation type HUD projects, or is it brand new?
It can be either. So that's the neat thing about it, is it really depends on what you need in your county. You could decide you're going to spend a couple $100,000 on housing rehab to help folks maybe in a neighborhood that you'd like to see housing brought up to code. You can work with a developer to build new apartments that you might have for the elderly within your community that you need. And what this money is really used for is kind of leverage other investment. So an example is, we did a 30-unit adult or elderly housing new development in King, North Carolina, in Stokes County. It was about a $3.5 million project. and the home consortium lent the developer $1 million, so that comes back into the consortium. But that was the leverage that that developer needed for a low-interest loan to get the rest of the financing in place and move forward. So there are a lot of different types of projects. I think the neat thing about this program is it's really what you want it to be. There are some guidelines, obviously, you can't go out and build, luxury houses for individuals or things like that. But it can be a lot of different things. It can work with current housing, it can be new housing, redevelopment of things that are on the ground, things like that.
Any more questions? And you need for us to show interest, am I correct?
At this point, it's really just a show of interest. We would pass that on to Burlington. We'll be setting up a meeting between the folks who are interested. And then you'll have an opportunity when the consortium agreement comes together to decide yea or nay on that final membership at that point before it goes to the time.
What's the consensus of the board? We're not committing ourselves to anything, correct?
I'll say go ahead and look at the contract.
We're interested.
Thank you very much.
Consensus of the board says we're
I'll
interested.
work with your staff and we'll come back to you with a presentation once that is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, the opioid settlement resolution. Mr. Miller.
Commissioners, you just had the opportunity to review, discuss, and ask questions about the supplemental agreement for additional funds from additional settlements of opioid litigation. I would ask that the board consider taking action on approval of the resolution you have in your agenda packet. If it pleases the board, I'm happy to read the resolution.
Go ahead, because I'm still looking. I've read it.
Resolution by the County of Caswell authorizing execution of opioid settlements and approving the supplemental agreement for additional funds between the state of North Carolina and local governments on proceeds related to the settlement of opioid litigation. Whereas the opioid overdose epidemic had taken the lives of more than 32,000 North Carolinians, whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has compounded the opioid overdose crisis, increasing levels of drug misuse, addiction, and overdose and death. Whereas the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates the total economic burden of prescription opioid misuse alone in the United States is $78.5 billion a year, including the cost of healthcare, lost productivity, addiction treatment, criminal justice involvement. And whereas certain counties and municipalities in North Carolina joined with thousands of local governments across the country to file lawsuits against opioid manufacturers, pharmaceutical distribution companies, and chain drug stores to hold those companies accountable for their misconduct. And whereas settlements have been reached in litigation against Walmart, Incorporated, Teva Pharmaceuticals Industries, Allergen Finance, LLC, Allergen Limited, CVS Health Corporation, CVS Pharmacy Incorporated, and Walgreens Company Corporation, as well as their subsidiaries, affiliates, officers, and directors named in the settlements. And whereas representatives of North Carolina governments and North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and the North Carolina Department of Justice have negotiated and prepared a supplemental agreement for additional funds to provide for the equitable distribution of the proceeds of these settlements. And whereas by joining the settlements and approving the SAAF, the state and local governments maximize North Carolina's share of opioid settlement funds to ensure that needed resources reach communities as quickly, effectively, and directly as possible. And whereas it is advantageous to all North Carolinians or local governments, including Caswell County and its residents, to sign on to the settlements and SAAF and demonstrate solidarity in response to the opioid overdose crisis and to maximize the share of opioid settlement funds received both in the state and Castle County to help abate the harm. And whereas the SAAF directs substantial resources over multiple years to local governments on the front lines of the opioid overdose epidemic, while ensuring that these resources are used in an effective way to address the crisis. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Castle County hereby authorizes the county manager or county attorney to execute all documents necessary to enter into opioid settlement agreements with Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Allergy, TIVA, to execute the SAAF and to provide such documents to Rubris, the implementation administrator, adopted the 6th day of March 2020.
Any questions, gentlemen? Do you have a motion to be approved? Resolution? Have a motion by Mr. McVeigh, second, Ms. Rose. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Ms. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Jeffers? Mr. McVeigh? Y'all votes aye. Motion carries. And I think we're up to the county manager updates.
Commissioners, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about broadband or any other subject. But I think I've given you the most recent broadband updates I have. I have had another meeting with Spectrum, but not a lot changed during our conversation. We're still trying to nail down dates that construction that has been completed will be released and mailers mailed out to residents. But you have the most up to date numbers. I'm happy to update you on anything else that you'd like to.
Just a construction question for my benefit personally, Mr. Miller. I see these contractors putting in the overhead, a part-time underground, part-time overhead. What's the minimum height they're putting that cable? Do you have any idea?
I do not. I don't know what the requirements are for height. I do know that if it does not meet the minimum height requirement, that they'll do one of two things. They'll either choose to go underground because remaining on the poles is cost prohibitive, or they'll work with the energy provider, whether it be Piedmont Electric or Duke Energy, and they'll have the poles replaced. One of the two.
The only reason I'm asking, they're in my part of the
Right.
and just looking at it from ground level, you see areas where, they're high on the pole, plenty of ground clearance. Then you run up on some areas where the ground clearance is not all that substantial. And I ask it for my own benefit. Some of this equipment we use on the farmlands got some pretty good height to it. And I don't want to be held responsible for turning a line down and ruining somebody's internet.
So in my discussions with Spectrum and pole replacements, it's not necessarily been the height off the ground that the cable is. There's a height requirement from the power lines too. A lot of times the height requirement from the power lines themselves is what indicates whether they're going to have a pole replacement or they have to go underground. So they're trying to judge, does it meet the height requirement from the ground up or from the line down? So, but I can find that out for you if you'd like.
Oh, appreciate it.
I'll find it out and be in touch with you.
Any other questions for the county manager? Commissioner comments? Mr. Jeffers? Mr. McVeigh? Mr. Hope?
I don't know if I missed it or not, but I don't think we ever hit the public comment.
We did. Nobody signed up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just want to make sure I had an opportunity.
I have one thing, and I really hesitate to bring it up, but it's been on my mind, so I will bring it up. It is concerning the vacancy on the board. I know, and I appreciate the Democratic Party sending this letter to the board. Mr. Miller, I appreciate you reading it. Last statement, last sentence there on the front, on the statute says the Board of Commissioners or the Clerk of Superior Court, the case may be, shall consult the county executive committee of the appropriate political party before filling a vacancy. But it's a comma after that. It's not a period. It reads, but neither the board nor the clerk of Superior Court is bound by the committee's recommendations. We'll make it very clear that just because a political party makes a recommendation to fill a seat does not mean that the board has to accept their nomination, so to speak. It is entirely up to the Board of Commissioners to fill that slot with who they think meets the requirements according to the statute, but who they feel is the most qualified. I just want to clarify that. Because, as I know some other members have had since our meeting in February, I've received some, let's just call it not so nice emails and US mail, but the statements that I made and the decision that I made at that meeting, I think were reasonable and were according to the state statute as I read it. The statute says, be a resident of the same district as the member being replaced if the county is divided into electoral districts. Nowhere in that statute does it mention old district, new district. When the election was held in November, the district lines changed in this county. Whether you like where those lines are or not, they are the lines that this board approved. I was not on the board when it was approved, but that's neither here nor there. But those lines are the lines that are in place today. This board approved those lines. An election cycle has been had in November. In my mind, those are the lines that we have to adhere to. I wanted to get that off of my chest tonight. Any other thing to come from the board tonight? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order. So,
Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn on that subject, I just did want to mention the 60-day timeline that the board has to, if it's going to fill the appointment, it's got to be done within 60 days of the date of the vacancy. And then if not, it goes to the clerk of Superior Court to fill that vacancy. I know you're aware of that. I just thought I'd mention as a follow-up to your comment about it.
thank you, Mr. Farrell. I believe that date is March the 17th, which will be before our next meeting, next regularly scheduled meeting, if I've done my math correctly. But thank you, Mr. Farrell. And the clerk actually has 10 days after that 60-day period, correct, Mr. Farrell?
That's correct.
Thank you. Did I have a motion to adjourn? And I have a second? All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank y'all.